Is it really true that Adam and Eve were banished from the Garden of Eden simply because they ate from a tree God had forbidden them not to go near? Is eating an apple quite a sin to be expelled? Well, until now, we have been told this narrative, and for some, it's quite hard to believe that it was a sin at all. However, now a new manuscript has been found that changes everything about Adam and Eve and everything we have been told until now. Believed to have been written in ancient times, the book has dispersed manuscripts in various languages, including Ethiopian, Greek, and even Latin, all explaining the same thing. They explain a detailed account of the lives of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, what they did wrong, and their lives after they were expelled. And interestingly, it's quite different from what we know, changing the very foundation of belief we hold about Adam and Eve being the first humans. So, what frightening and hidden does the lost book of Adam and Eve reveal? Welcome to a new episode of Uncovering Untold Stories, a channel where we talk about the secret and hidden historical stories, events, and incidents of the past that find their roots in either religious or history books. It's a place where you will hear the most unorthodox and hard-to-believe stories that have been forgotten but are part of history, shaping our lives to this day. In this episode, we will tell you the unorthodox and unusual truths in the lost book of Adam and Eve. Let's get started. In 1926, during the excavation of King Tutankhamun's tomb in Egypt, a remarkable manuscript was discovered. Titled, The Conflict of Adam and Eve with Satan, this text recounts the story of Adam and Eve after their expulsion from Eden. Introducing familiar characters from humanity's dawn, this extraordinary discovery presents an alternative narrative offering fresh insights into the timeless story of Adam and Eve separate from the established accounts in the Bible and Quran. The true origins of the Book of Adam and Eve remain a mystery. Scholars speculate it could date back centuries before Christ, with theories suggesting it may have been written by an ancient Egyptian, possibly in Arabic. Despite its obscure beginnings, this text's influence transcended language barriers, with translations extending its reach into Ethiopian culture and beyond. The Book of Adam and Eve holds profound significance beyond its narrative. Interestingly, echoes of its themes can be found in both the Jewish Talmud and the Islamic Quran, hinting at its potential role in shaping early religious thought. Despite not being included in the canon of major religious texts, the presence of these shared concepts underscores the enduring impact this book may have had on shaping humanity's understanding of its origins. Attributed to an anonymous Egyptian scribe who penned the tale in Arabic, the Book of Adam and Eve eventually found its way into Ethiopian literature through translation. Determining its exact age is challenging, with conventional wisdom placing its composition several centuries before Christ. The first English translation appeared in the 19th century, revealing glimpses of its narrative embedded in the Talmudic and Quranic traditions, cementing its importance in early human literature. A fascinating aspect of this enigmatic text is its division into two volumes, known as the Book of Adam and Eve. The first volume talks about Adam and Eve's expulsion from the paradisiacal Eden, chronicling their encounters with temptations orchestrated by Satan. Meanwhile, the second volume unfolds the compelling story of Seth and the tumultuous clans descended from Cain before the Great Flood. In a surprising twist, the text introduces the notion that Cain and Abel had twin sisters. Cain, drawn to his twin sister Luluwa, becomes entangled in familial expectations, leading to the tragic demise of Abel. The text vividly recounts the earth's shuddering response to Abel's spilled blood and Cain's futile attempts to conceal the crime, culminating in Adam and Eve tenderly sheltering Abel's remains within the sanctity of their cave for 7 years. Moreover, the Book of Adam and Eve diverges from the traditional biblical narrative by suggesting that both Cain and Abel made offerings of both blood and grain. This challenges the account in Genesis chapter 4, verses 3-4, where only Cain's offering of produce from the soil is mentioned while Abel presents the choicest portions from his flock. This discrepancy adds layers of complexity to the post-Eden narrative, unveiling a comprehensive depiction of Adam and Eve's journey as they navigate a new beginning within the mysterious confines of the Cave of Treasures. As Adam and Eve bid farewell to their idyllic abode, the Garden of Eden, the gates sealed shut behind them, guarded by a formidable angel wielding fiery weapons. Journeying across rugged terrain, they stumbled upon a cave atop a lofty hill, seeking refuge within its sheltering embrace. Their provisions diminished to the humble fare of cooked grains, foraged vegetables, and scant herbs, starkly contrasting with the abundance they once enjoyed. Entering the cave hesitantly, Adam grappled with waves of sorrow, mourning the stark contrast between their current dwelling and the lush splendor of the garden they once called home. He likened the cave's confines to a prison, yearning for the expansive beauty they once enjoyed. While the rocky shelter provided a semblance of protection, it paled compared to the divine sanctuary they once inhabited, where celestial beings danced in praise. Within the cave's confines, Adam and Eve bore children, Cain, Abel, Luluwa, and Kalima. Amidst their reflections on the irrevocable change wrought by their departure from Eden, Adam, imbuing the cavern with significance, bestowed blessings upon it, sanctifying it as a sacred space for prayer for himself and his descendants. He dubbed it the Cave of Treasures, imbuing it with the legacy of their journey and hopes for their progeny. Adam's journey highlights the profound mercy of God towards his creation, even in the face of punishment for transgression. As Adam and Eve departed the garden sanctuary, their spirits weighed down by uncertainty and fear, God's reassuring words reached them, infusing them with strength and resolve. Despite the barrenness of the unfamiliar landscape ahead, stripped of the lush beauty they once knew, Adam and Eve found solace in God's comforting presence. Confronted with the stark contrast between their new surroundings and the changed appearance of the Tree of Knowledge, they trembled with fear at the sight of the angelic guardian standing watch with a flaming sword. Their hearts gripped by dread, they awaited divine judgment. However, moved by compassion, the angel interceded on their behalf, appealing for God's mercy. In his infinite compassion, God saw their distress and offered words of comfort, lifting them from their fear and despair. He reassured them of his enduring plan for Adam and his descendants, promising a future shaped by his divine will despite the challenges ahead. God's promise became a guiding light for Adam and Eve as they navigated the uncertainties of their earthly journey until the realization of his divine plan. God's promise to Adam reveals his deep mercy and compassion for humanity. He assures Adam that the same word that created him, the word against whom he transgressed and was expelled from the garden, would also be the one to lift him up when he fell and ultimately save him. Initially puzzled by the reference to 5.5 days, fearing the impending end of the world, Adam is comforted by God's explanation. In his boundless mercy, God clarifies that these days symbolize 5,500 years, during which the Word would come to redeem Adam and his descendants. In this act of mercy, God reaffirms Adam's significance as a being created in his own image and likeness. He encourages Adam to strengthen his resolve and remain steadfast within the sanctuary of the Cave of Treasures, where he would find peace and protection. The books of Adam and Eve go into much greater detail regarding life after the fall. These texts describe the penance and suffering of Adam and Eve, who engage in extended periods of fasting and prayer. For example, in the Greek version, Adam stands in the Jordan River and Eve in the Tigris River for long periods as acts of penance. The Latin version similarly emphasizes their spiritual struggles and acts of remorse. These books also provide richer narratives about their life outside Eden, their relationships with their children, and their efforts to survive. The descriptions of Adam and Eve's deaths are detailed and often include prophetic visions of future redemption and divine comfort, adding a poignant conclusion to their story. Now, let's get back to the story. After Adam and Eve are sent to earth and they remorse, God commands all the creatures of the earth to approach Adam and be familiar with him, instructing them not to harm him, Eve, or any of their righteous descendants. In obedience, all creatures paid homage to Adam, except the serpent, which angered God. Later, emerging from the Cave of Treasures, Adam and Eve stood before the gates of the garden, their hearts heavy with longing for the paradise they once called home. Unable to enter, they turned southward and discovered the life-giving water that had sustained Eden, flowing from the roots of the Tree of Life. As described in the biblical Genesis account, this water divides into 4 rivers, the Tigris, Euphrates, Pishon, and Gihon, symbolizing a spiritual energy connecting all living beings to the divine. Approaching the source of this water beneath the Tree of Life, Adam was overwhelmed with grief. He lamented, beating his chest and directing accusations at Eve for the curses and hardships endured by them and their descendants. Startled by Adam's outburst, Eve sought to understand his distress. In anguish, Adam explained how they once took the water for granted in the garden. Now exiled to a foreign land, they recognized its preciousness and its potential to sustain their bodies. Eve, moved by Adam's words, shed tears, mirroring his profound sorrow. Overwhelmed by their emotions and the bitterness of their circumstances, Adam and Eve reached a desperate resolution. Driven by despair, they made the decision to end their lives by plunging into the water, hoping to escape the painful reminders of their loss and suffering. This part of the narrative might seem perplexing, portraying an extreme response to their despair. One might question whether their fate truly ended in the water. Contrary to expectations, their apparent demise served an unexpected purpose for their mortal bodies. As Adam and Eve lay submerged on the brink of death, God, in his boundless mercy and grace, turned his attention to them. He sent an angel to intervene divinely. The angel lifted Adam and Eve from the depths of the water, carrying them to safety on the shore where they lay motionless, appearing lifeless. Reporting their condition to God, the angel announced the apparent passing of his creatures. Yet, in a miraculous display of divine power, God's word breathed life back into them, resurrecting Adam and Eve from the brink of death. As Adam regained consciousness, he recounted to God how they had failed to understand the importance of water while living in the garden. However, upon leaving Eden and arriving in unfamiliar lands, they discovered their desperate need for it. In response, God explained to Adam that they had been unaware of the significance of water while under his command and adorned with bright angelic forms. Now, in their mortal state outside the garden, water became essential for their sustenance and growth, similar to the beasts of the earth. Overwhelmed by thirst, sweltering heat, and sorrow, Adam and Eve faced a critical choice. Despite their dire need, Adam resolved not to drink the water, fearing it would worsen their punishments and those of their descendants. United in their decision, they turned away from the water and sought refuge in the safety of the Cave of Treasures. Inside the cavern, Adam's sorrow weighed heavily upon him, compelling him to throw himself to the ground in despair. As darkness enveloped the cave, Eve rushed to his side, unable to bear witness to Adam's anguish. Despite her efforts, she felt powerless to alleviate his suffering, overwhelmed by a sense of helplessness and sorrow. In this poignant moment of human frailty and despair, Adam and Eve grappled with the harsh realities of their existence outside the garden. Their hearts were burdened by the weight of their transgressions and the consequences that followed. Once again, God's boundless mercy shone upon Adam and Eve in their darkest hour. Adam, seemingly lifeless, and Eve, rendered speechless by fear and the surrounding darkness, were reached by God's compassionate word. His intervention rescued Adam from the brink of death and restored Eve's ability to speak. The unfamiliarity of the darkness they encountered starkly contrasted with the perpetual light of the Garden of Eden, where visibility was crystal clear. In the garden, Adam and Eve's bright nature enabled them to see each other clearly, fostering a profound sense of connection. However, inside the cave, despite their physical closeness, darkness obscured their vision, preventing them from perceiving each other. God stressed the importance of obedience in the garden, where their radiant nature harmonized perfectly with his divine will. Through their obedience, a radiant light enveloped Adam and his companions, illuminating their path. Yet their transgression led to the loss of this divine light, plunging them into darkness. Out of his mercy, God did not subject Adam to complete darkness, but instead clothed him in a mortal body adorned with skin capable of enduring the world's challenges. God comforted Adam, assuring him that the darkness would not last forever, but would dissipate after 12 hours. As darkness passed, daylight would return, granting Adam and his descendants the chance to resume their duties and continue their journey. This comforting reassurance demonstrated God's enduring love and mercy, guiding Adam and Eve through the trials of their mortal existence and offering hope with each new day. But here, questions arise on why Adam and Eve had to endure so much just because they ate from a tree. One common interpretation views the act as a metaphor for sin. In the biblical story, God explicitly instructed Adam and Eve not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. When they chose to disobey, they prioritized their own desires over God's command, introducing sin into the world. But questions arise here. If God did not want Adam and Eve to sin, he should not have given them this capability. However, if God wanted to give free will to Adam and Eve, what they did next should not be considered a sin. What Adam and Eve did was a symbolic act that underscores humanity's tendency towards rebellion and the repercussions of prioritizing personal will over divine guidance. It raises profound questions about the moral dilemmas surrounding free will and obedience to higher authority. Another interpretation suggests the forbidden fruit symbolizes knowledge or wisdom that God intended humans to refrain from at that time. According to this view, Adam and Eve had been provided with everything they needed in the Garden of Eden, but their decision to eat the fruit reflected a desire for knowledge beyond what God had ordained. This interpretation often portrays the fruit as a symbol of intellectual curiosity or the pursuit of enlightenment that leads to disobedience. It prompts contemplation on humanity's quest for knowledge and the ethical implications of seeking knowledge independently of divine guidance. Eating the forbidden fruit can also be interpreted as a metaphor for moral awakening. Before consuming the fruit, Adam and Eve lived in a state of innocence, unaware of the concepts of good and evil. However, after eating it, they gained moral discernment and became conscious of the consequences of their actions. This interpretation frames the narrative as a metaphorical journey from naivety to moral maturity, highlighting the loss of innocence and the weight of moral responsibility that accompanies newfound awareness. In certain theological and literary traditions, the forbidden fruit is associated with sexual awakening. Eating the fruit symbolizes the moment Adam and Eve become aware of their nakedness, marking the beginning of human sexuality and the loss of innocence. This interpretation emphasizes how disobedience can catalyze profound changes in human consciousness and relationships, including an awareness of physical desires and intimacy. What are your thoughts on the lost book of Adam and Eve and whether it should have been included in the Bible? Do you think that Adam and Eve were expelled from the Garden of Eden, not because they ate an apple, but because of something else? In the comment section right below, share your thoughts on whether one should read the book of Adam and Eve beside the Bible. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We bring videos on stories that might sound controversial, mysterious, and shocking, but are real and have roots in religious and history books. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.